Hello, and welcome to State 2 of our road trip across the myths and legends of every state in the United States of America, in alphabetical order. So when you think of the greatest, most desolate frontiers on Earth, what do you think of? The Wild West, Siberia, the great expanses of the ocean that go uncharted? Well, if you said Siberia, you wouldn't be too far off from where we're heading today. Today's topic is Alaska. Alaska is a place rich with history from the strong Native American culture that's still apparent there. This, paired with its vast, remote landscape, allows for an imagination to run wild upon hearing about the plethora of ways that one could have disappeared. As crazy as it sounds, 500 to 2,000 people disappear each year in Alaska, never to be seen again. And today, we're going to explore some of the many myths and legends that Alaska has to offer, some of which are spine-tingling explanations for many of these disappearances in the vast state. So our first urban legend, if you can even call any of these that because they all occur in such rural areas, is the Alaskan Hairy Man. The Alaskan Hairy Man isn't necessarily a single man, but more so presented as a race of creatures that isn't necessarily well documented, but carries with it an endless trail of personal account. The Hairy Men are a supposed race of creatures dwelling in Alaska's dense cold woods. Stories describe them as taller than a man, clad in thick fur, and able to produce noises like that of a loon. The earliest tales of these men date back to the 1920s and 1930s, when multiple tales of run-ins with hairy men literally shut down an entire town in the area where Portlock, Alaska currently stands. In short, a logging operation was put to a standstill because a man was hit with a heavy piece of equipment that was too heavy for a man to lift. Shortly after this, people started going missing and turning up literally torn to pieces in the wilderness surrounding the villages. This was followed by a multitude of sightings of this cryptid, which led people to start leaving the city behind in droves. Fear became so rampant that a canning operation even set up armed guards around its factory to try to attract employees back. Hell, even the local post office shut down. Moving on from this, in the 1960s, a man working a mining operation actually made a sighting of one of these, later confessing that he supposedly killed the creature, thinking that it was a bear, but when he stumbled up to it, he realized that it was so similar to a human that he thought he'd done something horrific. Thinking he'd go to jail, he dismembered the creature and threw its body into a nearby stream next to his mining operation. There's many modern personal accounts as well. In 1993, the Anchorage Daily News actually recruited personal stories of encounters with Alaska's Hairy Man after villagers in southwest Alaska caused a stir the prior fall after seeing one of the hairy creatures. One man came forward claiming that on a hunting expedition he awoke to find footprints of these creatures. Upon following them, he was met with an 8-foot-tall man covered in fur who simply smiled at him and ran off. The man returned with his hunting partner later that evening to measure the footprints of the creature, finding them to be 17 inches in length and about 5 inches in width. Absolutely gigantic. Yet another story claims that they saw a smaller cousin to these hairy men, referred to as the little folks, near a berry farm, sitting underneath a tree and smoking a pipe with his big pointed nose and ears. If you continue sifting through Google, you will literally see an endless stream of these personal accounts of encounters with both small and large hairy men in Alaska. Next up is the Keelut. The Keelut, if I'm pronouncing that right, is a piece of Inuit folklore, supposedly designed with the purpose of keeping children from traveling alone in the darkness of winter, when many different tragedies can befall someone. The Keelut is an evil spirit, not a cryptid, that looks like a dog lacking hair and has hunger for the bodies of the deceased. It's seen among the Inuit people as a harbinger of death of sorts that only has hair on its feet and has tracks that disappear to throw off suspicious onlookers. Supposedly, the gaze of the Keelut is dangerous on its own as well, with the ability to confuse people who so much as look at them, causing them to forget who they are, what they're doing, and subsequently killing them and eating them. Our next cryptid is the Qalupalik. I'm almost certain I'm not pronouncing it right, but the Qalupalik is a bit of a dark mermaid sort of character with green, finny, scaly skin. This creature is also a legend of the Inuits that thrives in the icy Arctic waters. Apparently, they smell like sulfur and forge their clothing from ducks. They also wear an amaltik. I don't know how to pronounce that either, but what it is an Inuit tool to carry children, but they wear them for another intention. They use these devices to thieve children from underwater and stuff them inside and escape with them into the icy waters below. These creatures lure their victims by knocking on the thin ice below and also humming under the water to lure children to the edge of the ice. Once they capture their victim, they take them underwater and feed on them to retain their supposed immortality. Our next myth is that of the Alaskan UFO Base. If claims are true, then there might be a UFO base inside of Alaska's highest mountain, in Mount Hayes. Evidence of this is few and far between, but there are some fairly credible stories to support this claim, the most notable being 1986's Japan Airlines Flight 1628. This flight was a cargo transport taking wine from Paris to an airport near Tokyo, and at some point, crew members identified two objects off to the left of the plane, which quickly approached the aircraft. Descriptions of this craft include rectangular thrusters, though the rest of the aircraft was cloaked by darkness. When this craft closed in, more light radiated off of it, heating up the aircraft's cabin according to the pilots. Later, apparently a third larger object also began to trail the plane. The aircraft hailed local aircraft controllers, prompting them to contact a military vessel and another aircraft nearby, neither of which were able to sight the vessels supposedly following the flight. According to the pilot, the unidentified craft ditched them and went on its way when they got to around Mount Denali. After this episode, the pilot ended up being interviewed and told his account, for which he was reprimanded by Japan Airlines and moved to a desk job for a few years before being reinstated as a pilot. The FAA actually recognized this event and staged a meeting that, according to the accounts, was said at the time to have never taken place, and only months after, released a report claiming that this whole episode was due to a split radar image, and that there wasn't anything at all in the sky that evening. Despite this, to this day, the pilot of that flight is convinced of what he saw. In 1987, this was followed by similar sightings accompanied by aircrafts being noted at extremely high speeds that would enter and leave aircraft radars in a matter of seconds. And to accompany this, while of debatable credibility, at the time the CIA was running a remote viewing program, which is, in short, the act of viewing physical things with the mind. Sounds crazy, I know. But keep in mind, while there is no scientific evidence of remote viewing existing within the scientific community, remote viewers during this period mentioned multiple times locating bases underneath Mount Hayes in Alaska that were of extraterrestrial origins. This is found in declassified CIA documents from the time. Our next myth is that of the Alaska Triangle. So, if you've listened to Let Me Know at all, you'll be well versed in the vague triangular-shaped regions of the world that people refer to as legendary hotspots for the unknown. But did you know that Alaska has one of these to call its own? While the Bermuda Triangle is in a highly trafficked maritime and aviation hotspot, the Alaska Triangle is oddly remote while still experiencing a high volume of unexplainable phenomena. Bordering Juneau and Anchorage and stretching all the way up to the northern coast of Alaska, the Triangle is home to many remote wildernesses, cold mountain peaks, and miles of desolate nothingness. With this in mind, is it any surprise that previously unobserved phenomena occur here so regularly? The mystery here began in the 1970s when a high-profile individual, literally the majority leader of the United States House of Representatives, was in a small private jet that literally vanished without a trace. leading to one of the largest search and rescue missions ever, which involved 32,000 miles squared and almost 100 aircraft. And to conclude this, nothing at all was found. Of course, the triangle is gigantic. It would be quite easy to miss a fallen plane in that inhospitable and unbelievably large wilderness that is this geometric container. But statistics begin to side with the believer that something might be afoot when you consider that since 1988, there have been just over 16,000 disappearances here. Keep in mind though, again, that this thing that is afoot could very well just be the statistical probability of ending up lost in an expansive forest. Regardless of this though, Alaskans, tourists, hikers, and aviators alike continue to go missing to this day, with the culprits being blamed on weather, aliens, aforementioned cryptids, and other odd phenomena, but oftentimes occurring within this infamous triangle is enough to say that the disappearance was supernatural in origin for many people. Our final legend today is that of the Kushtaka. Often cited as one of the reasons for disappearances in Alaska that I'd be ashamed to leave out of this is the Kushtaka. The Kushtaka is a half-man, half-otter, Bigfoot, E.T., boogeyman, supernatural being of sorts that is the character and the subject of many Alaskan-related conspiracies. To put this more succinctly though, the Kushtaka is a mythical, shape-shifting creature of the Tlingit. I can't say anything on this list right, but definitely not this. People. The beast is supposedly capable of shaping itself into your deepest fear and may be the descendant of a fallen angel, according to lore. According to the people of legend, the Native American people, the Kushtaka live with the purpose of trapping souls to prevent reincarnation of their victims. And what do they mask themselves as most of the time? Well, that would be otters. These creatures can also mask themselves as another person, one of your own, to lead you into an isolated place and kill you, or turn you into a Kushtaka yourself. Apparently these creatures can also band together in groups, or mask themselves as an innocent individual in distress to lure you close. But luckily these creatures do have one vice: dogs. Kushtaka are said to be deathly afraid of our fluffy companions. Thank you for joining me today on our spine-tingling trek through what I truly believe is one of the last great frontiers that we have left to explore in this world. Whether or not these stories turn out to be true, you can rest assured that there are many, many secrets that Alaska still holds. If you liked this video and you want to be informed of more, please subscribe and turn on notifications to hear about the next one. If you want to help the YouTube algorithm identify my worth, please give me a like. It will help me tremendously. If nothing else, as fall draws near, the days get shorter, and the season gets spookier, don't you ever leave the house without man's best friend, lest the Kushtaka will have its eye on you. But also, don't you ever forget, it's always story time.